Oldsmobile Jetfire. Back in 1962, when tailfins were fading but space-age dreams were alive and kicking, Oldsmobile rolled out the Jetfire, a car so ahead of its time it practically needed a user manual just to drive. It was the first production car with a turbocharged V8 engine, cranking out 215 horsepower from a 215 cubic inch aluminum block. The turbo system was paired with something called turbo rocket fluid, a fancy name for a mix of distilled water, methanol, and a corrosion inhibitor. Drivers had to top it off like windshield wiper fluid, or else risk the turbo saying, "No thanks." Despite its groundbreaking engineering, the Jetfire was a little too complicated for most people. If you forgot the magic juice or didn't maintain it just right, it became more trouble than it was worth. By 1963, Oldsmobile quietly pulled the plug, and most Jetfires were retrofitted with conventional carburetors. Only 3,765 Jetfires were sold in 1962, and a further 5,842 were built in its final year of 1963. Chevrolet Corvair Corsa Turbo. The '65 Corvair Corsa Turbo was GM's answer to the question nobody asked, what if we built a Porsche in Ohio? With its air-cooled, rear-mounted flat-six engine and sleek new body, the TSI was the kind of car that made you do a double-take at the badge. Chrysler? Really? Because under the hood, and just about everywhere else, this was actually a rebadged Mitsubishi Starion, imported from Japan and given a Stars and Stripes makeover for American showrooms. It was Chrysler's attempt to join the turbocharged, fuel-injected, rear-wheel drive cool kids club of the '80s, and the Conquest TSI didn't just show up. It strutted in with pop-up headlights, flared fenders, and a serious attitude. With a 2.6-liter turbocharged four-cylinder putting out 176 horsepower, it was quick for the time and had that turbo whoosh that made every on-ramp feel like a qualifying lap. Still, it wasn't perfect. The big turbo made for noticeable lag, and that 2.6-liter engine had a reputation for being a bit temperamental if you weren't kind to it. But when it worked, it worked. Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. By '88, the Turbo Coupe had matured into a serious player, with a sleek, aerodynamic body that made it look more Miami Vice than Midwestern driveway. Under the hood, it packed a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline-four, good for 190 horsepower and 240 torque when paired with the 5-speed manual, a combo that made it surprisingly quick, especially for a car that looked like it should come with a Phil Collins cassette. It had an was the car's way of politely saying, "You should have gotten the stick." While most of us were busy flexing V8 muscles, the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe was showing that a Turbo 4 could brand quietly impressive. After '88, Ford swapped the Turbo 4 for a V6 and a softer vibe, ending the Turbo Coupe era. Mazda Yunos Cosmo 20B. Sold only in Japan under the upscale Yunos brand, the Cosmo 20B was the first and only production turbochargers, a setup that sounded like science fiction back and delivered it with a smooth, high-revving punch that made even seasoned gearheads do a double-take. Under the hood, it was complex. Under the skin, it was plush. The Cosmo wasn't just about speed, it was about being fast and fancy. Unfortunately, the Cosmo's complexity, thirsty engine, and exclusive Japanese market release meant it never quite hit the mainstream. Mazda only made about 8,875 of the 20B-powered versions, and they remained a unicorn outside. Isuzu Impulse RS Turbo. The RS Turbo was the high-performance, all-wheel drive version of the second-gen Impulse, and it came loaded with rally-ready vibe. Under the hood was a 1.6-liter DOHC inline-four, boosted by a turbo to make 160 horsepower. Isuzu's shaky U.S. brand recognition and the fact that it wasn't a Honda or Toyota, the RS carved out a niche among enthusiasts who appreciated its quirky charm, solid grip, and underdog spirit. Only about 800 were sold in the US and Canada. Sadly, the Impulse RS was a one-year wonder in the States, gone before most people knew it, and just the right amount of weird. Plymouth Laser RS Turbo. Built as part of the Diamond Star Motors love triangle between Chrysler, Mitsubishi, and Eagle, the Laser shared its DNA with the Mitsubishi Eclipse and Eagle Talon, but with its own badge, pop-up headlights, and a name that sounded like a sci-fi weapon. The RS Turbo was the top trim, and it meant business. A 2-liter DOHC turbocharged engine pumping out up to 195 horsepower, if you picked the AWD version with a manual transmission. That combo turned the Laser RS into a legitimate pocket rocket. Quick, grippy, and more fun than most people expected from a Plymouth. Inside, it had all the 90s trimmings, digital dash, optional leather, and enough hard plastic to remind you of your Walkman. It wasn't flashy, but it could absolutely embarrass bigger, pricier cars if provoked. Sadly, the Laser never really found its audience. Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor. Built in the early 1980s, money, time, and practicality weren't a thing. The M4S was a sleek, low-slung supercar prototype that looked like it drove straight out of a video game. And then, in 2.2-liter 4-cylinder engine, turbocharged and intercooled to the tune of 440 horsepower. Yes, 440 horses from a 4-banger in the 80s. That gave the M4S a top speed of over 190 miles per hour, numbers that put it right up there with Ferraris and Porsches of the time, though it was never intended for public roads. The car was mid-engined, beautifully aerodynamic, and completely impractical. Everything a supercar should be. Only a few were built, and most were stunt or display models. The M4S stands for mid-engine, 4-cylinder, sports, but they might as well have called it WTF, because no one expected Dodge to cook up something this wild.